I was always the punchline to their jokes, the lumbering target of their sharp tongues and cruel laughter. Today was no different. We were at Splash Out, the water park renowned for its towering slides and twisting tunnels. The sun blazed overhead and laughter rippled through the air. But not mine. For me, this place was just another stage for humiliation. The gang, my so-called friends, clustered around me near the entrance of the Turbo Twist. It was a short, narrow slide nestled among the towering giants of the park, but its reputation was deceptive. It was tighter than it looked, almost claustrophobic.
Bet you wouldn't fit.
Matt sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. The others erupted in laughter. My stomach churned as I climbed the steps to the slide. The rough concrete bit into my bare feet, each step amplifying the knot in my chest. At the top, the lifeguard gave me a dubious look but said nothing as I positioned myself on the slick edge. I hesitated, my gaze darting to the entrance of the slide. The opening looked uncomfortably snug, a glossy black moor glistening with running water. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for my inevitable retreat. Heat flushed my face, not from the sun, but from the shame simmering under their scrutiny. Fine, I'll do it. Their laughter turned into whoops of mock encouragement. The cool touch of the water against my legs sent a shiver up my spine. I pushed off, the initial rush of momentum making my heart leap. For a moment, it was exhilarating. The darkness of the tube enveloped me, water splashing against my sides. But then I felt it, the slide narrowing around me. My shoulders scraped against the slick walls, the friction slowing me down. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized I was stuck. I tried to wiggle, to shift my weight forward, but the slide gripped me like a vice. The flow of water, relentless and uncaring, pooled around me, rising quickly. The water was up to my chin now, surging against my face. I craned my neck, desperate to keep my mouth and nose above the rising tide. My breaths came in shallow gasps, the air in the tube thick and humid. I thrashed, trying to free myself, but the effort was futile. My skin scraped against the abrasive surface, and I felt a burning sting on my arms and sides. With each attempt to move, the pain intensified. The water pressed against my body, forcing me tighter into the unforgiving tube.
He's stuck! Get help!
Inside the tube, my reality was collapsing. The rising water sloshed against my face, and my vision blurred with tears and panic. I could feel the skin on my arms and back peeling away, raw and exposed from the constant friction. Blood mixed with the water, its metallic scent filling the confined space. Suddenly, I felt a violent tug on my legs. Someone was trying to pull me free. The force sent sharp jolts of pain up my spine. My skin stretched, tearing in places as my body resisted the pull. Another impact reverberated through the tube. Someone outside was hitting it, trying to crack it open. Stop! I wanted to scream, but the words were drowned out as water flooded my mouth. I choked, my chest convulsing as I fought for air. The pulling intensified, and with a sickening lurch, I felt myself being wrenched free. The rush of air and blinding sunlight hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed onto the wet pavement, my body trembling uncontrollably. For a moment, I was overwhelmed by the sheer relief of breathing again, but then the pain hit me in full force. Gasps and cries erupted around me. I looked down at my arms, at my chest. and my breath caught in my throat. My skin was gone in long, jagged strips, leaving raw, red flesh exposed to the air. Fat and tissue gleamed wetly under the sunlight, grotesque and shimmering. Blood oozed from the wounds, pooling around me. My friends stood frozen, their faces pale and eyes wide with horror. The lifeguards hovered nearby, their faces grim. One of them barked into a walkie-talkie, calling for medical assistance. As I stood up, pain radiating through every nerve in my body, I could see the fat under my skin quivering with every shuddering breath I took. Strings of it dangled from my arms, grotesque and alien. People gathered at a distance, their horrified whispers carrying through the air. The world around me blurred, the colors bleeding together in a surreal haze. Before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was the reflection of my mangled body in a puddle of water, a sight so horrifying it burned into my mind. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, my body swaddled in layers of gauze. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air. I couldn't move without sharp, searing pain shooting through me. My parents sat beside me, their faces etched with worry and guilt. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. The word felt like a cruel joke. My body was a patchwork of scars, a grotesque reminder of what had happened. They say trauma changes you, and they're right. I don't leave the house much anymore. The world outside feels too sharp, too cruel. The whispers, the stares, I can't bear them, but after all, maybe it doesn't matter. In the end, the scars speak louder than words ever could. I've always hated the way I looked. My crooked nose, uneven skin, weak jawline. Nothing ever seemed right. No amount of working out or dieting could fix my flaws. It wasn't just me either. The world agreed. Beauty is born, not made, they said, and I began to believe it. I started to resent my body, my face, everything about me that didn't match what was perfect. Then came Bieber, the doll. It was everywhere, plastered on billboards, filling up social media feeds. The perfect figure, smooth skin, the proportions of a goddess. People didn't just admire Bieber, they worshipped it. Even celebrities, already attractive, began going under the knife to look more like it. It became the beauty standard. And me? I wanted it too. I wanted to be admired, desired, perfect. That night, I was just a volunteer at one of those exclusive, high society parties, serving drinks to the rich and beautiful, the people who were already living the perfect life I longed for. Dr. Valois was the guest of honor. Everyone knew who he was, the man behind the Bieber doll and the revolutionary surgeries that promised no pain, only perfection. His speech that evening was mesmerizing. He talked about creating a flawless world, a world where beauty reigned, where everyone could look as perfect as Bieber. Beauty is made, not born. His words sank deep into my bones. I could be perfect too. I could be a part of that world. Then came the raffle. I never gamble. Luck had never been kind to me. But something pushed me to join this time. My heart raced as I dropped my number into the box. I wasn't expecting to win. It was just a small, desperate hope, a dream. And then against all odds, my number was called. I didn't win the grand prize, but third prize was more than enough. I could choose one feature to fix, one part of me to be perfected. Dr. Valois smiled at me.
So tell me, what do you want to change?
Without hesitation, I said, my nose. It was the most obvious flaw, the center of my face. I thought if I fixed that, maybe everything else would look better too. The hospital was like a different world. Everyone there looked like they had stepped out of a dream. Smooth, flawless faces, perfectly proportioned bodies like real-life versions of the Bieber doll. The surgery was quick, painless, just like they promised. When I removed the bandages and saw my new reflection, I couldn't believe it. My nose was perfect. I looked handsome. I had never felt that before. The compliments came fast. People noticed me. They wanted to talk to me. Photographers, casting agents. They all said I looked like a movie star. They started calling me Human Doll Kang. And for once, I wasn't ashamed of my face. I was one of them, the beautiful people. But it didn't last. The more attention I got, the more I craved. It wasn't enough to just have a nice nose. If I wanted to stay in this world, I had to keep going. I had to become even more perfect. I drained my savings into more procedures. Muscle implants, jaw sculpting, leg lengthening. Why bother working out when a quick injection could give you a body like a Greek god? Every surgery brought me closer to that doll-like perfection. But every surgery also made me want more. My skin wasn't smooth enough. My face wasn't flawless enough. I needed my skin to be tight, shiny, like the porcelain dolls I saw everywhere. So I went back to Dr. Valois. I begged him to do more. At first, he refused.
You were pushing too far. That perfection had its limits.
But I wouldn't listen. I demanded Botox more than ever before. I wanted my skin to be absolutely perfect. And eventually, he gave in. That was my mistake. The moment I woke up from the last surgery, I knew something was wrong. My face felt tight, like it was being stretched over a frame too small for it. The skin was too smooth, too unnatural. I ran to the mirror and nearly vomited at what I saw. My face was swollen beyond recognition. The symmetry that once made me handsome had turned monstrous. My features were bloated, distorted. The skin around my eyes was so tight. I could barely blink. My cheeks were lumpy, my lips grotesquely swollen. I wasn't a doll. I was a freak. I panicked. I begged Dr. Valois to fix it, but he refused. He said there was nothing more he could do, that my body had reached its limit. But I didn't care. I snuck into the clinic one night, stole syringes, Botox, anything I could get my hands on. I injected my face over and over, desperate to smooth out the bumps, to stretch my skin into something beautiful again. And then, it ripped. I kept injecting, kept trying to force my face into something it could never be. The skin on my cheeks split open, blood pouring down in thick streams. My lips burst, swollen, flesh tearing apart like overfilled balloons. My eyes, God, my eyes. The pressure made them bulge so much I thought they'd pop out of my skull. I collapsed on the floor, blinded by blood and pain, gasping for breath. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Dr. Valois.
You've ruined it!
He whispered, his voice cold, detached.
You were so close, but now look at you.
I tried to speak, but my lips wouldn't move. Blood filled my mouth, choking me.
The world I'm creating is for the perfect. There's no room for the ugly.
And then, with one swift motion, he plunged the syringe into my neck, sending me collapsing to the floor. The last thing I saw before my vision faded was his smile. Perfect. Flawless. Inhuman. I had chased perfection. And in the end, it destroyed me.
It was my first night shift alone, but I tried to keep calm. This was just another part of my job as a medical examiner. Bodies came and went. They were lifeless, just shells. I repeated that to myself, hoping it would make the unease settle. Tonight, though, felt different. There were 3 bodies lined up for autopsies. The first 2 went by without incident. Routine. Accidents. Nothing remarkable. But when I pulled the 3rd body from the cold chamber, something inside me faltered. A woman, early 30s, pale skin, dark hair matted with dried blood. Her name was Jane Doe, and her cause of death was listed as a stroke. There was nothing unusual about that, but something about this body felt off. I glanced at her hand and noticed something strange. It looked like a bite mark. I pulled up the case file and saw a note scribbled in the corner. Witnesses reported Jane was found in the middle of an exorcism. I stared at the words, trying to process what I was reading. An exorcism. That wasn't something you saw in an official report every day. I shook my head, trying to shake the growing sense of dread. It didn't matter how Jane had been found. What mattered was determining her actual cause of death. I shook my head, scolding myself. It was just nerves from being alone. I'd seen worse before. Much worse. I gathered my tools, mentally preparing myself for the examination. I slid the scalpel down her chest, cutting through the skin with practiced precision. Everything was going smoothly until the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then surged back on, but not before I felt a strange sensation, like a static charge running through my body. My hands trembled, the scalpel slipping slightly, leaving a jagged line on her skin. I cursed under my breath and steadied myself. It was just a power fluctuation. The building was old. These things happened. As I continued the autopsy, something changed. I swear I heard a faint whisper. I paused, holding my breath, listening. Silence. Then, a faint creaking noise. It was coming from the body. My heart skipped a beat. I took a step back, eyes wide. The corpse's fingers twitched. I shook my head. That's impossible. I leaned in, cautiously inspecting her hand. There was no sign of movement. Maybe it had been a trick of the light, a result of my overworked imagination. But then it happened again. This time, her whole hand jerked. I stumbled back. I froze. Her eyes, once lifeless, were now locked onto mine, filled with something dark and malevolent. A chill swept through the room and the whispering returned, louder now, surrounding me. The sound was everywhere, growing louder with each breath I took.
Let me out!
The body slowly sat up on the table, moving with stiff, unnatural motions. Her eyes never left mine. I tried to move, tried to scream, but my body refused to cooperate. I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed with terror.
You can't leave!
The voice whispered again. Though the corpse's mouth didn't move, it echoed inside my head.
I need you!
The lights flickered again, and the room was plunged into darkness. I heard the scraping of metal against metal, the sound of the body moving closer. Panic surged through me, adrenaline finally kicking in, and I bolted for the door. My hand fumbled with the handle, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But the door wouldn't budge. Please, please, I whispered, turning the handle with all my strength. Please open! A cold breath brushed against the back of my neck, and I turned, heart pounding. She was standing right behind me, her face inches from mine. Her eyes gleamed with something unnatural, something ancient.
You can't escape!
She murmured, her voice now clear and cold.
I've been trapped for so long!
Her hand reached out, and before I could react, it latched onto my arm. A burning sensation shot through me, and I screamed as she bit into my flesh, leaving the same mark that scarred her own hand.
I need a body. Yours looks strong.
The cold, sharp pain intensified, and I felt something crawling inside me, something dark and invasive. My vision blurred as I struggled to break free, but her hold was unyielding. The whispers grew louder, deafening now, as the presence began to force its way inside my mind. Suddenly, I wasn't in the morgue anymore. I was in a dark, endless void, floating in a sea of nothingness. The only thing I could hear was her voice, echoing around me. I could feel her taking over inch by inch, claiming my body as her own. My thoughts grew foggy, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. I tried to fight back to push her out, but it was no use. She was too strong. Just before I was consumed entirely, her voice whispered one last time, soft and triumphant.
Thank you for your gift.